Thank you for tuning into our podcast to Nowadays, What Life Was Like in the Industrial Connecticut River Valley of Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining us today is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Como. He personally offers and leads public and private tours, as well as presentations of historical sites within communities throughout the state of Massachusetts. Currently, the communities he has chosen to focus on this year are Holyoke, Chicopee, South Hadley, and East Hampton, and also Granby and Amherst as well. His tours spotlight on the local canals, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks, streets, and selected historical houses within each community. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the Batchelor Brook in South Hadley and Granby, Massachusetts. So, where does the Batchelor Brook start and end?
It starts out in Granby, very close to the border with Belchertown, and it runs through Granby, then into South Hadley, pretty much along the Mount Holyoke Range, and then it ends up putting out on the Connecticut River. So today we're going to talk about where it's dammed, and what the brook should be called, and then what the future of the brook's probably going to hold. Now, it's emptying those 2 ponds that you find in Granby. They're really both reservoirs. So it ends up stopping up the Forest Pond and emptying it out, and then stops up the Aldrich Lake and emptying it out. They're both reservoirs. And then when it gets into South Hadley, it ends up emptying out the Pearl Pond, which is really also a reservoir, and dump it into the Connecticut River. And by the end, it has a lot of water in it, so it's a very important tributary of the Connecticut River itself. So we're going to talk about a lot of fascinating things about this, and why it's named the way it is, or what it should really be called. That's a cool question.
And where is the Batchelor Brook dammed?
Okay, it's dammed several times for a good reason, because you want to get power out of it. It's first dammed at the Forest Pond location. It's a very, very big pond. It's really a reservoir because it's been dammed up. It's dammed right at that location. And there used to be a small canal which brought the water behind a mill that would use it. And then 2 miles or so, or 3 miles away, it was dammed at the Aldrich Lake. And there they had a mill that would use it also. It didn't require canals since the water coming towards it was very close to where the water wheel was, which didn't use that power. It's also dammed in Pearl City neighborhood at the Pearl City Dam, and it backs up there, the Pearl City reservoir itself. And then that's it, 3 big dams. All the dams are still there. They all were powered dams, and behind them, those bodies of waters are really reservoirs, so they're not natural lakes and natural ponds. In fact, South Hadley doesn't have natural lakes in that part of South Hadley. It has one towards the southeast corner next to the Britton Lakes, and those are only natural parts. And Granby itself, there is no natural lakes and ponds around. All right. So people got to keep that in mind. They always think, oh, look at that beautiful pond, when it's really not such at all.
And really quick, before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to sign up for any of his various tours or find out any more information, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltours.org. And there you can find videos and podcasts of the stops on each of his tours, as well as photos and text of the historical sites throughout as well. And for private tours and other inquiries, you can email him directly at bobcat4214 And his tours make for fun, educational, outdoor activities for families and group parties. So getting back to our interview, what should the Batchelor Brook really be called?
Yes, there's 3 terms that can describe a flowing body of water when, of course, it goes through mountains, through its watershed, when it, whether it's coming off its pond or reservoir or lake. there's three names for that flowing water. If it's very wide and deep, it's called a river. If it's very narrow and not deep, it's called a brook. And usually a brook you can jump across. Now there's an in-between case called a creek, and that's when you cannot jump across it because it's a little too wide, and also when it's just barely deep enough so you can actually float a boat in it. That's called a creek. Now, the Batchelor Brook is one of the few misnamed bodies of water around. Most of the flowing water around the Connecticut Valley area are named correctly in their second name. They are rivers or they are brooks and they're named correctly. Now, the Batchelor Brook is not a brook. It's a creek, so its real name should be the Batchelor Creek. Now, another property of most of flowing bodies of water is they're named after the place that they end in. And this one is named after a place where it's around where it starts. And so it should really be named after a name in South Hadley, but it's named after a place in Granby where it starts. So it would have a totally different name in both its names, a creek and then a different first name. But we have to go with the historic names. It's a Batchelor Brook.
And what does the future of the brook hold?
All right, there are elements in both towns that are trying to make it into a water greenway area, and the Batchelor Brook Greenway study group is looking into that, how to make it sure that it's clean water, how to make sure there's enough access points to it so people can enjoy its presence, how to make sure that there's parks around it, and there's one big park around it near its end now, and that's the Batchelor Brook, Stony Brook Greenway State Park at its very end. And it deserves to have more. Maybe there should be a little park at Aldrich location, which has changed drastically, and they got rid of the water wheel and the mill recently. Maybe things should change a little bit. The Forest Pond area, have a tiny put-in there that's well taken care of. There's a put-in, but I think it should be expanded and kept up. And in South Hadley, you can have one. They actually made a new one. There's a conservation land now right on Route 116, where it crosses 116. There's a new conservation act. And there they count upon the put-off from the highway, which is large enough in most cases, but they should have a trail system that goes into that park and have a trail that goes up that you can safely see the brook from both sides of the street. And you should also make sure it's a nice natural preserve look to the whole length of the Batchelor Brook itself. And so that's my take on what should be done, and other people will have their take, and at least people are looking into the situation in both of these communities. So thank you.
And thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours and historical topics of your expertise. And of course, we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And you can check out a large selection of other podcasts on his website as well as on SoundCloud.com. And be sure to stay up to date with more podcasts and videos posted daily. Thank you. Batchelor Brook or Stony Brook Conservation Area. So what is the trail system like in the Batchelor Brook, Stony Brook Conservation?
It's very extensive and very well organized, and there's a big trail map online. There's a big trail map at the actual site itself, and the way we're going to do this is we're going to talk about why these trails are here, what they're good for, and also why this land even exists, and some of the details and how these might change in the future. But on this one here, you have a possibility of getting in off of Ferry Street and going straight in the parking area there. And usually people do a loop around the area. It goes towards the one part of the loop goes towards Connecticut River. The other part goes around towards the right, and that goes to a wooded section. And it goes by total 4 signs that describe the area in terms of Native Americans, our vegetation, our bird life, so forth. And so if you take this trail, you can go a little further out on the one by the river, but not too much because the Batchelor Brook stops you. But if you want to, you can go on the right-hand side trail from the parking lot and take the first right, and that brings you, after about a half mile, out to the other major section of this huge trail system. And that trail system brings you out to the town farm, brings you out to a soccer field and a South Hadley parking lot. Across the street is a farm. And if you walk down Route 47 for about a quarter mile, it comes to a small parking lot where it has a major access point to another big loop trail. And there it has little dead ends off of the four points of it. But just taking that big loop is very exciting because you get to see the terrain changes, different life forms, a lot of tree life, and you get to see the estuary of the Batchelor Brook expanded outwards and outwards. So this is fun to take.
Now, what is the major reason this Batchelor Brook conservation exists?
It exists because Mount Holyoke College decades ago had bought this land, and they decided that after they used a bit of it for a rowing center, they were going to give the rest to South Hadley to use as a conservation land. And of course South Hadley agrees. It's extremely large, and that's great because it's almost 2/3 of a square mile, and you can go, especially on the one off of Route 47. You can go inwards on your own and see animal life, and you can look down into the Batchelor Brook and see all different aquatic life, and it's passable on the first one anytime there's no snow. So the one off of Ferry Street, the one off of Route 47, you have to make sure you're not there during mud season because it absorbs lots of water and it keeps it in the path, and so you have a muddy path. Except for June, July, and August and September, maybe 4 months is passable. The other months is so very icy or muddy or snowy, so it's very hard to get through. But it exists now as a conservation land that the of South Hadley can enjoy. They can see all different kinds of life if you walk around to different points. Its location and terrain varies so much. You can see a great deal.
So quickly before we continue with the rest of the interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to find out more information or sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there he has both videos of the various stops along each tour and also past and present photos of the historical sites throughout as well. And if you're interested in setting up a private tour, you can email him directly at bobcat4214V@yahoo.com. And they are perfect for fun and educational outdoor activities for the whole family or for your group parties, especially those special occasions and get-togethers. And they are also good just for getting outdoors for the day. So getting back to our interview, give us some of the formal details about the Batchelor Brook, Stony Brook Conservation Land.
All right, besides the two access points, it's also a 285-acre parcel, about 2/3 of a square mile. That's enormous for this land. And you can get into many different places and walk around. Like I told you, one of the best places, just look at the Connecticut River. You can also go out to the other side off of Route 47 and see lots of cool things along there. It's a big loop, but it changes constantly. Some go straight up towards a hill, and some go down towards the Batchelor Brook River itself. Now, it was purchased through donations from Mount Holyoke College to help them acquire more of the land, even though Mount Holyoke owned it. And they also had money in their own account, the Conservation Commission, and they bought this land. It was a great thing to do. And they fixed it up with trails, and they fixed the small tributary brooks coming in now have wooden bridges going over it. And so it's a great thing to go around and learn on your own.
Now, what can be done to improve this conservation land?
Okay, on this one, it's hard to say because so much effort has been put into it. They have a nice trail map already on the internet for you, and both loops are pretty good shape, especially the one off of Ferry Street. Great shape. The parking lots are good. Two things I've always wondered why they don't do is they might be able to extend the sidewalk on the edge of Ferry Street all the way down to this trail put in on Route 47. They've extended that sidewalk from the center out to the soccer field, which is a great deal. That was about a half mile. They should extend it another quarter mile out to the trailhead on Route 47 so people can get down there safely. Now you have to walk on the very edge of the road and there's no breakdown lane. And the other thing is some of the trails off of Route 47 get extremely muddy during certain times of the year. And so they might think about somehow trying to prevent the water from building up on the trails so much, such as pouring soil in some portions, or trying to have small places where the dam might be a tiny dam that stops some of the water from running right through the trails. And that'd be great because it'd be, instead of 4 months out of the year using it, you can go to 8 months. But that's never been done.
Well, thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours, and I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And you can also tune in to a large selection of our other podcasts and much more at his website. Again, that's holyokecanaltour.org. And again, you can email him directly for private tours or to inquire about anything else at bobcat4214 @yahoo.com. And be sure to keep an eye out for his upcoming 2024 season tours and more as they become available. Thank you for tuning in.